Hi everyone, welcome to the re:Invent session, Data Protection and Compliance for Cloud Workloads with AWS Backup. My name is Nancy Wang and I'm the head of AWS Backup, and I'm excited to present here today with Paul O'Flynn, who is the Principal DevOps Engineer at one of our customers, Workday. So here's a quick agenda of all the items that we'll be covering during this session. Starting off with an overview of AWS Backup. Then we'll move into discussing AWS Backup for multi-account environments, after which I'll give you a quick demo on how AWS Backup works across your accounts with AWS Organizations, and then I'll turn it over to my guest presenter, Paul O'Flynn, who will talk to you about Workday and how they have implemented AWS Backup. And of course, we'll end with the exciting segment of what's coming up next in 2021, as well as all the cool new features that you can start using today with the service. So starting off with an overview of AWS Backup. Now, I'm sure you're all here because you either work in backup, or you've had pain points with backup, or you're an industry expert, or a combination of all three. However, a lot of you may have questions about how backup works on AWS, or how does backup differ when you're talking about in-cloud, cloud-native workloads. So traditionally, right, with on-prem, you had tape drives, you have different storage arrays, and all of those needed to work together in an orchestrated manner to provide you backups. Now, with that said, in terms of Gen 2, as we had more customers have hybrid workloads that are distributed across on-premises and the cloud, they started to have backup solutions that could work across the two different environments. Today, for our focus, we're going to talk about AWS Backup, which is AWS's own cloud-native solution for protecting your mission-critical workloads that you run in the AWS cloud today. So today, with the launch of AWS Backup, we started supporting services such as EBS volumes, RDS databases, DynamoDB databases, storage gateway volumes for those of you who write your on-premises workloads into the cloud, EFS file systems, and starting in 2020, we soon expanded that to include EC2 instances, Aurora clusters, and of course, we'll talk about that and so much more. So how does AWS Backup really work with your workloads? For starters, it's fully managed, which means that it makes it easy for you to centralize management, protection, monitoring, and as well as automate the backup across all of your AWS workloads. In addition to specific workloads, we also introduced our first ever application consistent backups this year as well, with Windows applications running on EC2. One thing to call out about AWS Backup is the ease of use as well as the automation that it provides, which I won't spoil the surprise because Paul will be touching upon that just a little bit in his presentation. Of course, there are some main use cases that some of our largest enterprise customers use us for today, which include protection against ransomware, other attacks, or simply sometimes accidentally deleting your data or your important files. And upon those discovery, then we'll need to restore your workloads or simply allow you to restore that single file or folder that you may have accidentally deleted. So a couple of components that are really key to call out about the AWS Backup service include identity-based policies, right? So let's pause there for just a second. Policies. Policies are central to how we think about backup management on AWS. When you create a policy via the backup plan, you are indicating to the service how frequently you want to take your backups, how long you want to retain those backups, and the schedule by which you want to move those backups from warmer storage to colder storage, right? And as well as indicate who do you want within your organization to be able to access those backups, edit those backups, and even delete those backups. And so policies, and in this case, identity-based policies, are very central to the AWS Backup Service. Second of all, execution identities or service roles. So for example, in terms of how we make sure that only those who are authorized to access your backups can, is that we have two default managed service roles. One of those is the backup administrator role or full access role, and the second one is the backup operator role. The full access, as you can imagine, allows you to create, manage, edit, and delete your backups, whereas the backup operator role will only allow you to create and restore your backups. That way, using a combination of both, as well as custom IAM roles where you can attach certain permissions to, will allow you to really explore and leverage AWS Backup to the full extent of your data protection needs. And of course, lastly, resource-based policies. So if you'd like to come down to the level of the most granular management policies and enable only certain individuals within your organization to have the access to certain resources, we also allow you to be able to handle those permissions on a resource-based level. So here's a high-level architecture slide of how AWS Backup works today. And so one of the newest releases we just came out with within the last month is that of cross-account backups. So as you can see here, member accounts maintain separate credentials to the overall management account. So for example, if you were to set up your organizations and accounts using AWS Organizations, you would most likely want to manage all of your backups from the central account or the management account. And however, you still want potentially all of your member accounts to have their own logical separations. Many customers tell us today that wouldn't it be great if they had a central backup account? That means a single account within their AWS organizations that contains all of the backups from all of the other accounts in their AWS organizations. Well, that is possible today. Using cross-account backups, you can simply set up the ability to copy your backups from other accounts to a central account or from many accounts to an account to maintain that separation, which gives you protection against hacks, as we discussed before, ransomware protection, or simply someone accidentally deleting your backups or maybe that entire account. And so here we'll move into a quick demo of how does AWS Backup work for multi-account environments. So earlier in 2020, we launched the ability to manage your backups at scale with AWS Organizations. And so many customers of AWS Backup today have hundreds, if not thousands of accounts within their AWS organizations. And they want the ability to centrally manage and monitor, but don't want to do that on account by account level because, after all, who wants to go through every account and individually set up backup policies? Well, with this feature, you have the ability to do that at scale. So here's a quick demo that I'm going to walk you through from what it looks like on the console. So as you can see here, you can enable backup policies, enable cross-account monitoring straight from the console. Here's the first screen that you'll see that you go through as you create a backup policy and configure a backup plan. This is also what it would look like from the JSON template. And once you create this policy, you will then see all of the targets, such as the accounts or organizational units within your AWS organizations that you want to attach this backup plan to. You'll get a notification, and the monitoring feature enables you to see the backup jobs, restore jobs, as well as cross-region copy jobs that you have configured. As well as AWS Backup Console, you can also use this feature within the AWS Organizations console, which their editor will have the exact same capabilities as the backup plan policy editor today. Just for security, we show you what notification you would get if you try to enable this feature from a non-central or non-management account. For your protection, we do not enable users from a non-management account to do this at scale. All right, so that wraps up the demo for our cross-account management with AWS Organizations feature. Now I will turn it over to my guest speaker, Paul O'Flynn from Workday.
Thank you, Nancy. Hi, everybody. My name is Paul O'Flynn. I'm a DevOps engineer at Workday Extend. Fun fact, I wrote my first database backup script on an IBM mid-range server a long time ago. We backed up to large, bulky, quarter-inch tape drives, which Amazon does not support, I am happy to say. Okay, quick introduction on Workday Extend. Workday Extend allows Workday customers to build custom applications that deploy into the Workday tech stack. Being Workday, we have a lot of very large customers from many different industries, including governmental agencies, financial institutions, people like that. For storage, right now, we're using Elastic File System, RDS, and DynamoDB. So, as I mentioned, we have some interesting customers, the kind of customers who like to look very carefully over your shoulder. As a result, we are regularly and fairly heavily audited. We implement all the usual good industry SOC controls and ISO controls. Few I wanted to focus on today include, around our backups, include that the backups are encrypted at rest, that the backups are stored in a geo-distant fashion, that we monitor our backup jobs such that if they fail, we know about it, and last but not least, that our backups will automatically delete after a certain period of time. So, what did we do before backup? Well, for our RDS databases, we relied solely on the automated backup feature of RDS, and for our DynamoDB databases, we relied solely on the point-in-time recovery feature. Now, these are great features, but they only give you up to 35 days of backup data. And before we were generally available, what we would do for other backups is we would just manually take snapshots of all of the databases, the file systems. So that is pretty painful, as you can imagine. So how do we solve these SOC controls? Well, for encrypted at rest, we simply define a key on our backup vault. For the geo-distant backups, we copy our backups from US West 2 over to US East 1, which I will show you in a minute. For the jobs monitoring, we use SNS integration. And lastly, to schedule backup deletions, we define expiry rules on the backup plan. So quick tips on using AWS Backup. Use tags as a sort of abstraction layer. I'm going to show you my tags in just a moment. I started off doing this. My idea was I would have a whole menu of tags for my customers to choose from. For example, like hourly backup tag, a nightly backup tag, a monthly backup tag. But after a while, I realized that that would require my developers to be aware of what are the SOC controls and what are the ISO controls and which tags they would need to apply to which resource type. So I actually changed gears, and instead of doing tags by time, I did tags kind of by resource. So now I have a database tag and I have a file system tag. And then in the background, I make sure that those tags kick in the kinds of rules we need them to meet our SOC and ISO controls. And then our developers, when they create a database, they simply add a database tag. When they create a file system, they add a file system tag. And they don't have to think about, oh, do I need this to back up nightly? Do I need it monthly? Which rule do I apply? They don't have to think about any of that. Also, cross-region copies are a good idea for obvious reasons. I would point out that you can get some amount of geo-distant storage by merely storing a backup in one region, because the backup vaults are similar to S3. They're stored across availability zones, and availability zones are separate physical data centers. So you do get some amount of geodistant there, but there's some debate how far apart those availability zones are. So in our case, we copy them 3,000 miles. That eliminates any debate. Also, today we notify on failed backups, but it's also a good idea to notify on successful backups, depending on the frequency of your backups. Say, for example, you're backing up once a week. Why not have a notification every week that a successful backup happened? Let's say the backup failed and your failed notification failed, and you would never know, right? But if you're sending out emails, nice, low, non-disruptive emails once a week saying this backup succeeded, then if those emails stop arriving one week, you'll probably notice. Okay, so I'm going to step you through our setup on the Amazon console. Here we are in a backup vault. As the name implies, this is where all the backups are stored. You'll notice that in this one vault, we have many different resource types. In this particular screenshot, it just shows the Aurora databases and the DynamoDB databases. If we flipped ahead a couple of pages, we would see EFS file systems and anything else you may have backed up here. Another key point to look at is on the top right. You will see a KMS key definition. So all of the backups on this page in this vault are all encrypted at rest using that key. And of course, you can implement any key KMS policies around who gets to decrypt and who gets to encrypt and all of that kind of good stuff. So let's jump into our backup plan. We have two, a nightly plan and a monthly plan. Each plan consists of two main components, the backup rules and the resource assignments. So in the nightly plan, I have a nightly backup rule. So let's take a moment to look at our nightly backup rule. Starting from the top, work our way down. We got a frequency. Being nightly, this frequency is set to daily. We have the time set to start at 6:45 p.m. I would point out that is not a rock hard, as soon as the clock hits 6:45, this backup will immediately start running. I always imagine these backups running kind of low priority asynchronous fashion. So it just guarantees that it won't start before 6:45 p.m. But in this case, I want it to start within 1 hour. So it will start somewhere between 6:45 and 7:45. If it does not start by 7:45, I actually want it to fail. Similarly, I want the backups to complete within 3 hours. Right now, our databases are fairly small. There's no reason at all why they should not complete within 3 hours. If they're still running within 3 hours or they haven't even started within 3 hours and something's gone terribly wrong, and I want them to fail. Also, we have a lifecycle rule on here. We can transition these backups to cold storage after 2 months. And honestly, I don't know how much cold storage costs in AWS Backup, but I'm very confident it is extremely cheap. We also want them to be expired within 1 year. So as soon as they're 1 year old, AWS Backup will delete those backups out of the vault. We want them to back up to our main DevOps backup vault. And lastly, down at the very bottom, we have the copy region job defined. So if you notice on the top right, we are currently in Oregon, US West 2. So down at the bottom, I'm saying, okay, once you're done backing up to Oregon, I want you to copy it over to US East 1 also. And on there, I say which backup vault within US East 1. I say how long I want it to live in live kind of hot storage before moving to the cheaper cold storage. And again, lastly, I want it to expire after a certain period of time. Okay, so which resources will this plan apply to? Well, very simple. I just have one tag. I look for EFS backup equaling true. So any resource anywhere that has this tag will be picked up by this nightly plan. Notice on this page, it's super simple. It's just the tag and the value for the tag. There's no resource types. Like you could, in theory, put this tag on EBS volume and it will get picked up and run nightly. Can be any resource at all. All we're looking for is this simple tag. Okay, let's jump over to our monthly backup rule. Very similar to the nightly rule, except surprise, surprise, frequency is set to monthly. In my case, I want it to run on the second day of each month at 7:15 p.m. Start within 1 hour, finish within 3 hours, transition to cold storage, auto delete, and again, copy over to US East 1. And for the monthly plan, the tag I'm looking for is DB Backup. So this goes back to earlier when I talked about the tags as abstraction layers. So for databases, for the hourly and the nightly kind of backups, we're relying on the automated backup feature or the point-in-time recovery feature of DynamoDB. That will give us 35 days. AWS Backup is giving us monthly snapshots. So I don't need AWS Backup to do nightly backups of those databases or hourly backups. I just need it to do monthly backups. So for my developers, whenever they create a database, I make sure they turn on the point-in-time recovery or the automated backup feature, depending on the database type. And I make sure they stick a DB backup tag equaling true on all of their databases. That's it. It's really simple. And then they don't have to worry about, as I mentioned, what rules apply to the database. Should they do it monthly, when they should expire them. They don't have to think about any of that stuff. Just stick this tag on the database and you're good. So we'll jump over to our file system. Very simple example of an EFS file system here. We stick the EFS backup tag on it. It'll get magically picked up every night and backed up every night. Similarly in RDS, because it is a database, we want the DB backup tag to be applied. And if we jump over to DynamoDB, it's the same tag. So two very different database types, but as far as stock controls are concerned and as far as our customers are concerned, these are databases. We want monthly snapshots. We have that 35-day point-in-time recovery set. So we are good, good, good. Okay, back to the backup console. And we are looking at our jobs so we can see all of the backups, when they occurred, what was backed up, which database, what type. Across the top here, you'll notice 3 tabs. One is backup jobs. We're very, very focused on backup jobs, but of course, there's also restore. You can restore databases right from in here. Not something you do very often, hopefully. And the third tab there is the copy jobs tab. If I click on that tab, I will see all of the jobs copying from US West 2 over to US East 1. And just to make sure my US East 1 copies are in fact running, I switch regions on the top right. I'm looking in Virginia. I see my vault here. I see all the same backups I saw on the earlier screen, but now they're all in US East 1 as well. And notice again, top right, there's also a key definition on here. It is a different key than what is on the US West 2 vault. Okay, so that's all the backup rules. Notification. One problem with backups, of course, is you set them and you forget them, and then when you need them, you suddenly realize they're not there. So just to make sure we know if a backup actually fails, we can use standard SNS notifications. In this case, I have a very simple subscription that is an email. They're actually distribution email lists. So if any backup jobs failed, we will send an email to a distribution list at Workday. So, quick summary, what do we see? Auto controls. We need backups encrypted on rest. We do that by defining a key on the vault. We need geo-distant backups. We do that by copying to a different region. And as I mentioned earlier, even within one region, you actually do get some level of geo-distant storage across availability zones. But, when it comes to governments and banks, let's copy it 3,000 miles away. They're not going to complain about that. We have backup expiry. We define that on the backup rule. And lastly, the backup jobs monitoring we achieve using SNS subscriptions. Okay, what might we do in future? Well, kind of top of my list actually is the new cross-account backup feature, which I'm pretty excited about. I actually want to create an entire account that does nothing but store backups. Seems a bit overkill, but I don't think so. If our main account ever got compromised, it would be very, very comforting to know that the backups that we have are in an entirely separate account and are safe. I mean, we can super restrict access to that account, and we'll know, like I said, the real key is that if my account gets compromised, how do I know they haven't also taken my backups? So let's copy them off, not just to a different region, but to an entirely different account. And then they are safe, safe, safe. Today I showed you, number 2, I showed you how we send emails on failed notifications. I would actually like to, in addition to the email, to also hit our PagerDuty. So in PagerDuty, we use PagerDuty pretty heavily, and we have kind of centralized runbooks and responses defined in PagerDuty to any issues in production. So no reason why failed backups should not be part of that. So in our SNS topic, we can subscribe to PagerDuty, have it create an incident over there. Similarly, number 3, if a backup job fails, have SNS directly hit Jira and create a ticket. So there's no question about somebody going in and saying, oh yeah, I fixed it, it's fine, don't worry. Let's create a ticket, let's get it logged, let's have some action, some response, some reviews, some approvals on there. And lastly, we don't use EBS today, but we plan to soon, and for that, it should be trivial. As I mentioned earlier about the tags, if we start using EBS, we should simply be able to add the FS tag to all of our EBS volumes, and then they will be magically picked up. They will have the same rules applied to them as the EFS file systems, which are the same rules that SOC requires for EBS volumes, right? They're just hard drives, they're just file systems as far as SOC and ISO is concerned. So it should be like 0 work for me. And just again, just a reminder to my developers, make sure you put this tag on your EBS volumes. And then we will have EBS support. That's it. Thank you. Back to Nancy.
Cool. So after Paul's great presentation, I'd like to take you through all of the new features as well as what's coming up next in 2021. So one of the new features is that we now support FSX managed file systems. So that includes both FSX for Windows as well as FSX for Lustre. So how this works is FSX now becomes the 8th protected AWS service on the AWS Backup platform. So customers can set the same backup policies that they do across all of the other AWS services that they already protect today. So including backup frequency, retention schedules, lifecycle, for example, and using tags, they can determine which of their FSX file systems they'd like to protect and how frequently they like to protect them. Additionally, they can also control costs by making sure that they can delete unneeded FSX backups, and most importantly, that the backups of their FSX file systems continue to persist even after the source file system has been deleted. One of our other new features is the cross-account copying of backups. So as mentioned in the diagram with AWS Organizations, with member accounts, the management account, and the backup vault, for example, is that customers can choose to have one central backup vault, an account for all of their backups, thereby protecting it against deletion or malicious, for example, attacks. And they can also use AWS Organizations to determine the trusted boundaries of which accounts they want to be on the receiving end of the cross-account backup copies. So super important feature, in fact, one of our most top requested features since the service launched. And with the ability to already copy their backups cross-region and cross-account, customers now have a comprehensive business continuity and ransomware protection strategy. So now you may ask, where is AWS Backup available? Well, AWS Backup is available in 24 global regions, including regions in North America. We have South America presence, Europe, APAC, including Africa. And so what you can do then is, using all of the regions where we are available today, copy your backups from any source region to any other region where the service is available. Of course, if there are any regions where you do not see us available and you'd like us to be present in, please work with your local account teams to put that on our radar. And lastly, I'd like to close with this slide, which is a timeline of how many AWS services AWS Backup has supported since we launched, as well as all of the platform functionality. So to start, fun fact, the service itself was launched in January 2019, and we started out by supporting 5 AWS services: EBS, Storage Gateway, RDS, DynamoDB, and EFS file systems. Then fast forward to January of that following year, we added support for EC2 AMIs, as customers wanted to back up their EC2 workloads at the instance level. We also introduced cross-region backups, enabling customers to conduct business continuity practices by copying their backups from one region to another, and finally, enabling customers to restore items within their EFS file system, such as individual files and folders. Starting in June 2020, we then added Aurora cluster support, supporting both MySQL as well as Postgres engines, and enabled customers to configure and manage their backups at scale with AWS Organizations in the demo that you saw in this presentation. We're not done yet, because this quarter we introduced FSX support, so support for both FSX for Windows as well as FSX for Lustre backups, as well as enabling customers for the first time to copy their backups from one account to another account using the trust boundaries that they have identified in AWS Organizations. If you refer to the architecture slide that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation, and added support for our first ever application, Windows and SQL Server, enabling customers to take application consistent backups of their Windows workloads running on EC2 using our VSS integration. Now in 2021, we're bringing you even more features and services, including S3 backups at both the bucket level and object level, and enabling you to download auditor-ready compliance reports straight from our console, and also leveraging AWS Config to give you a bird's eye view of all of your resources running on AWS, as well as how many of those resources are being protected and how they're being protected. And of course, adding protection for some of the new cloud-native services that you use in your mission-critical applications, such as DocumentDB, Neptune, and Keyspaces. And of course, finally, moving up the stack, so enabling you to abstract away from distinct AWS services that comprise your application to protecting applications that comprise of many services, enabling you to think about your applications or your backups at the application level. Ultimately, our mission and strategy is to be the central management platform for all of your data protection needs, whether it's individual AWS services or at the application level, and enabling you to be compliant across your AWS organizations. Thank you for joining me today.